A 23-year-old woman left her parents' house on a cold December morning, promising to be back by lunchtime. She had a short to-do list, a familiar route, and no reason to expect anything unusual. But something along that quiet path didn't go as planned. And when a small clue surfaced in the most ordinary place, it would set off a chain of questions that led detectives to a truth no one saw coming. Welcome to The Smoking Sun, where I tell true crime and sometimes just creepy true life stories. If you enjoy videos like that, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. Now, let's get into it. Julia Dawson was 23 years old in December of 2004. She was a mother of two, known for being gentle, reliable, and deeply devoted to her children. She had been living with her parents in Clio, Michigan after a rough patch in her marriage. Those close to her said she was trying to rebuild her independence while still maintaining a connection with her strange husband for the sake of the kids. On the morning of December 11th, Julia told her parents that she had a few errands to run, getting a few groceries, and possibly picking up a prescription refill. It was a Saturday, and she said she'd be back shortly. She got into her van, pulled out of the driveway, but something about that day wouldn't go according to plan. When she hadn't returned by that evening, her parents grew anxious. They started calling around. Friends, relatives, even the father of her children. No one had seen her, and no one had heard from her. Her phone would ring a few times, but then would go straight to her voicemail. By the next morning, when it was now 24 hours after she was last seen, Julia's parents reported her missing to the Genesee County Sheriff's Department. They told the officers that she wasn't the type to just up and disappear, and she would never go more than a few hours without checking on her kids. The case landed on the desk of a seasoned detective with the Genesee County Sheriff's Department. We'll call him Frank Mills, which, for the story's purpose, is a pseudonym for the actual investigator in the case. From the onset, he sensed that Julia's disappearance was more than just a routine missing person case. 2 days later, on December 13th, Julia's van was found. It was parked in the lot of a small church on Pasadena Avenue in Flint, about 15 minutes from her parents' house. A church custodian had called it in, saying the vehicle had been sitting there all weekend. The van was unlocked. Her purse was still inside, sitting on the passenger seat, untouched. Her keys were gone. Her coat and gloves were also left behind. There were no signs of struggle, no broken glass, no damage, no blood. Just a few everyday items inside. Her makeup bag, a couple of receipts, a grocery list, and a fast food wrapper. Her phone and ID were missing. But everything else, the kind of things that no one leaves behind on purpose, was still there. To someone walking by, it might have looked like someone had just stepped away for a moment. But to investigators, it didn't feel right. Not at all. People don't usually walk away from their wallet, their identification, and their sense of security. But there was no signs of struggle, no broken glass, no blood, no scratches on the outside of the vehicle. It looked like she had just gotten out. It wasn't chaotic, but something was clearly off. But nothing was adding up for Detective Mills. Julia's parents came to the scene and confirmed the purse was indeed hers, so the police started dusting for prints. When the police began canvassing the area, no one had seen Julia arrive, and no one reported hearing anything strange. The surveillance footages from nearby businesses, they were kind of grainy and ended up being pointed in the wrong direction. Even the church hadn't held any events that day. If Julia had left the vehicle on her own, there was no way to indicate where she might have gone or why. At first, Detective Mills wasn't sure what to make of it. the scene was quiet. There was no signs of foul play, and Julia had been dealing with a lot lately. She had recently separated from her husband and was back living with her parents. She was also working part-time, taking care of her kids, and also, money was an issue, which was a part of the reason why she moved back home in the first place. So at that point, the police had to at least consider the possibility that she stepped away for a bit. Maybe she was just overwhelmed and needed some time and space for herself. But that theory unraveled quickly. Her bank accounts hadn't been touched, her cell phone remained off, and she hadn't packed a single item from her room at her parents' house. No clothes, no toiletries, nothing. Whatever happened to Julia didn't seem planned, nor did it seem voluntary. As word of the van's discovery spread, so did the anxiety. Local news stations picked up the story, and within a day, Julia's family and close friends were out posting flyers all over Genesee County, on storefront windows, gas pumps, telephone poles, anywhere someone might stop and look. Even neighbors started to pitch in. Some offered to print flyers, others helped knocking on doors. Community members began organizing search teams, and volunteers from nearby churches, old classmates, and even strangers helped comb through the ditches and wooded areas along the route Julia might have taken that morning. Tips started coming in, lots of them. Some were well-meaning, but they really didn't help at all. One caller said they thought they saw a woman who might look like Julia at the gas station, and another even claimed they heard screaming at the church the night of the 11th, but they couldn't say from where. The Genesee County Sheriff's Department expanded their search and brought in additional investigators. Quietly, they started re-interviewing the people closest to Julia. The first person police spoke with was Timothy Dawson, Julia's estranged husband. They had been separated for several months, but still saw each other regularly because of 2 young children. According to Julia's parents, things had been civil, at least on the surface, but underneath there was some tension. Julia had started keeping her distance. She even mentioned she didn't fully trust him anymore, though she never said why. When deputies knocked on Timothy's door the day after Julia was reported missing, he was calm. He told them he hadn't seen her on the day she vanished. He claimed he had taken the kids shopping around 11 a.m., then went to Walmart by himself to grab some gifts. Detective Mills pulled up the surveillance footages from Walmart. Yep, there he was, just like he said, but the timestamp showed him arriving closer to 1:20 in the afternoon. Julia had left home around 9:15 that morning, so he left a window that wasn't fully explained. Mills paid Timothy another visit to question him about the time gap, and he said he was pretty sure he had left the house with the kids around 11, but admitted he might have been mixed up on the time. He said they stopped and looked at toys, maybe grabbed a snack, and that he didn't really keep track of the clock. Didn't think he had to. Nothing sounded too unusual, but the timeline didn't quite line up either, and Mills kept that in the back of his mind. But with no physical evidence at that point, he kept moving. Next was Ryan Keller. Now, he was a guy that Julia dated briefly during her separation from Timothy. From what Mills could gather, Ryan came across as respectful, polite, the kind of guy who'd send texts like, "thinking of you" or "hope you're okay." In fact, he just sent one of those messages 4 days before Julia disappeared. Mills brought him in and asked him where he had been on the 11th. Ryan said he spent most of the day at his friend Corey's birthday party and gave him Corey's number to confirm. But when Mills followed up, Corey told him Ryan didn't show up until late afternoon, closer to 3 p.m. That left entire morning unaccounted for. When Mills circled back, Ryan said he'd just been sleeping in. "I live alone," he said. "No one else to vouch for me." Nothing about his behavior stood out as suspicious, but the alibi was weak. Mills didn't see enough to move on him, but he also wasn't ready to rule him out. The last person Mills looked at during those early interviews was a neighbor. a man named Daniel Price, who lived just 2 houses down from Julia's parents. As part of the initial canvass, Mills and other deputies had gone door to door on the streets, asking if anyone had seen or heard anything unusual that morning that Julia disappeared. Daniel was one of the first to answer, and right away, something about him stood out. He seemed eager to talk, and some would argue a little too eager. He told Mills he'd seen Julia a few days earlier scraping ice off her windshield. He said that she looked stressed, but then he added something that no one asked about. He said, I always thought she looked nervous when she walked past my house. Now that made Mills pause. Julia hadn't been seen walking anywhere that morning, and no one had said anything about her acting nervous, so why bring that up? Mills decided to take a closer look. When he spoke to Julia's mother, she confirmed that Daniel had been unusually involved in recent weeks. He'd offered to shovel the walk, brought over small toys for the kids, and even asked if she needed anything from the store. Julia had once mentioned that he gave her the creeps, but never went into detail. When Mills circled back to question him again, Daniel's story started to get a little slippery. He said he stayed in that morning watching TV. Then he said maybe he dozed off, or maybe he ran out real quick and came back. He wasn't sure. The timeline changed each time he told it. It wasn't enough to accuse him of anything, but it wasn't exactly comforting either. Iona County sits more than 100 miles west of Flint. It's the kind of place you pass through on your way to somewhere else. It's quiet, mostly wooded, with open farmland, scattered trails, and the occasional hunting camp tucked deep into the trees. It was near one of those trails when a local man had taken his Labrador out for a walk. He said the dog kept pulling him towards the tree line just off the dirt road, sniffing hard and pawing at the frozen ground. At first, he thought the dog just found a deer carcass, but when he stepped closer, he saw what looked like fabric, and then a shoe. That's when he called 911. Sheriff's deputies responded and began digging. Just below the surface, they uncovered a shallow grave, and inside that grave was a young woman, fully clothed, and her body was twisted in a way that made it obvious that someone had put her there in a hurry. There were bruises on her face and neck. She also had a broken jaw and a broken orbital bone, which is widely known as the eye socket. There were also constraint marks around her neck and clear signs of blunt force trauma. Detective Mills got the call later that afternoon. He drove across the state and arrived at the scene within hours. There was no ID, just a body. But there was a small tattoo on their shoulder. When Mills showed the photo to Julia's family, they recognized it immediately. It was a tattoo of her children's initials. To be certain, dental records later confirmed what they already knew. The body was indeed Julia's. This wasn't a missing person case anymore. This was murder. Now they had a body, a dump site, and a 100-mile stretch of highway to explain. Someone had taken Julia all the way out there, killed her, and tried to bury what they had done. Literally. Based on court documents, police interviews, and physical evidence, here's what investigators believed happened. On the morning of December 11th, Julia left her parents around 9 a.m. to run errands. But instead of going directly to the store, she stopped to speak with someone she still had a complicated tie to, her murderer. They met somewhere out of the way, not a planned appointment, but one of those can we talk for a minute kind of things. Maybe it was about something personal, maybe it was just trying to set boundaries, or maybe she said something that didn't sit well with the person she was meeting. That person got angry. Words turned into shouting. At some point, something inside of them snapped. They struck her hard. Then again and again. Her jaw fractured. Her eye swelled shut. And finally, they put their hands around her neck and squeezed it till she stopped moving. Now, panicked, the killer had to cover their tracks. So they loaded Julia's body into the vehicle and drove west, far west, all the way to Ionia County, a part of the state where no one knew her or no one would think to look. Along the wooded road the killer had probably driven before and pulled off, dragged her into the trees, and dug a shallow grave. They buried the body quickly. Ground was frozen, so burying her body wasn't an easy task. They left her phone behind, but took her keys. Later that night, the killer returned to Flint and parked Julia's van in the church parking lot, unlocked, purse in plain view, to make it look like she just simply walked off. They probably thought they had created the perfect alibi, but they forgot one thing. When police re-examined Timothy Dawson's story after Julia's body was found, they started noticing small inconsistencies. The timing of his Walmart trip didn't quite match up. His account of that morning had shifted subtly each time he told it. That's when they decided to dig deeper. They obtained his phone records. Despite saying he hadn't gone far from home that day, Timothy's phone had pinged off of towers all the way across the state, near Ionia County, around noon on December 11th. That was right in the window between when Julia left home and when Timothy showed up on Walmart surveillance. Detectives brought him back in. This time, his demeanor changed. He got quiet, defensive. They applied for a search warrant for his vehicle, and in the back seat under the carpet liner, luminol testing revealed traces of blood, and it was Julia's. That was enough. The killer was Timothy Dawson, Julia's estranged husband. He was arrested on January 25, 2005, and charged with open murder, meaning the jury would decide anywhere from and in between manslaughter and first-degree murder, and he was also charged with obstruction of justice. In 2006, Timothy Dawson was convicted for murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His appeal was later denied. He remains incarcerated today at a Michigan state prison. Now, as a side note, sometimes dramatic licensing is needed for these stories to fill in gaps that aren't completely known, but I do try to use the information available to get the most accurate account. If you enjoyed today's story, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Smoking Sun for more true crime and creepy stories that keep you on the edge of your seat. Thanks for watching, and as always, see you next time.